Over-the-board tournament chess is a strict physical and temporal state machine. Every action must conform to an absolute set of mechanical laws. Casual players focus entirely on the theoretical geometry of piece movement. Professional competition, however, forces players to execute that theory within rigid, unforgiving physical constraints. The tournament system rests on three pillars in the FIDE rulebook: Article 4, which dictates the physical act of moving pieces, Article 6, which governs the chess clock, and Article 7, which establishes protocols for irregularities. Navigating these pillars requires answering one highly specific question: at what exact millisecond does a physical gesture become a permanent, binding, legal chess move? Ignorance of these precise temporal boundaries routinely costs competitive players. Minor physical mistakes translate directly into steep time penalties, the sudden forfeiture of tactical rights, or immediate losses. Mastering the physical execution of a move is a mandatory requirement for professional competition. Calculation means nothing if the execution violates the machine's strict parameters. This illustrates Article 4.3, the touch move rule. A deliberate physical touch dictates an irrevocable action. Touching your own piece legally obligates you to move it, and deliberately touching an opponent's piece mandates capturing it, forcing you to abandon any alternate sequence. This strict physical commitment creates severe edge cases, particularly under Article 4.4 regarding castling. The rulebook defines castling strictly and exclusively as a king move. If a player intends to castle, they must initiate contact with the king. If they execute the physical sequence incorrectly and deliberately touch their rook first, they instantly forfeit the right to castle on that side for the duration of that turn. Because they touched the rook, touch move protocols override their intent to castle. The player is now legally forced to make a standard, single square move with that specific rook. FIDE's strict sequence of physical touches entirely removes subjective intent from the tournament hall. An arbiter does not rule on what a player meant to do. They rule strictly on the observable physical action. This timeline tracks the legal phases of a turn. Under Article 4.6, a move is legally made the precise millisecond a piece is released. Once fingers leave the piece, it cannot be moved. During a capture, the opponent's piece must be completely removed before releasing the capturing piece. However, a move made isn't completed. A vulnerable gap exists. Article 6.7 states a move is completed only when the player physically stops their clock. The system explicitly requires that a player press the clock using the exact same hand they used to execute the move on the board. Players must also avoid actionable temporal offenses. Keeping a finger resting on the button or hovering closely over the clock is strictly forbidden and subject to arbiter penalization. The microseconds between releasing a piece and pressing the clock represent the most legally fragile phase of competition. The board state has changed, but the player's time is still burning, exposing them to potential clock flags. The requirement to press the clock to complete a move contains specific mathematical exceptions. When the board reaches a terminal state, the physical clock rules are instantly superseded. Under Article 5.1.a, the game concludes the instant a legal move resulting in checkmate is made on the board. The moment the player releases the piece delivering checkmate, time ceases to matter. Pressing the clock becomes entirely irrelevant. Article 5.2.a applies the exact same logic to stalemate. Releasing a piece that leaves the opponent with no legal moves while their king is not in check triggers an immediate, instantaneous draw. There is one mandatory prerequisite for this terminal override. The physical move producing the checkmate or stalemate must inherently be a completely legal maneuver. Mathematical finality overrides the temporal clock system only when the opposing king has absolutely zero legal responses available on the physical board. If a player executes an illegal move, such as moving a bishop like a knight, and completes the move by pressing the clock, they trigger a state corruption. This flowchart maps the algorithmic response. The arbiter pauses the clock, identifies the position prior to the irregularity, and reinstates that legal state. They then execute a time rollback, adjusting clocks to reflect time remaining before the illegal action. Even after rollback, the touch move penalty carries over. The player is forced to move the illegally touched piece. To penalize the error, Article 7.4 dictates the arbiter award 2 extra minutes to the opponent's clock. The system enforces a strict tolerance limit on these rollbacks. If a player executes a third illegal move in a single game, the arbiter declares an immediate forfeiture, and the offending player loses the match. Arbiters rely on these rollback algorithms to systematically preserve the mathematical integrity of the chess position, while simultaneously heavily penalizing the physical error that corrupted it. Players frequently corrupt the game state themselves by executing improper draw claims, failing to adhere to the strict physical sequence required by the rules. Amateur mistakes include randomly stopping the clock to propose a draw, making verbal offers mid-move, or offering a draw after moving a piece before pressing the clock to complete the turn. Claiming a draw based on a threefold repetition of position, or the 50-move rule, requires an exact systemic protocol outlined in Article 9. The sequence is mandatory. The player must first write their intended move on their scoresheet. They must then declare their intent to execute this move to the arbiter, and finally, they may legally stop both clocks to verify the claim. Article 9.4 contains a specific trap for the unwary. If a player physically touches a piece on the board before completing this written and verbal sequence, they instantly void their right to claim a draw for that specific turn. Rigid adherence to this exact reporting sequence eliminates subjective arguments over the physical board state and prevents players from using unauthorized draw claims to interrupt their opponent's thinking time. The environment of the tournament hall rests on three non-negotiable physical realities. Touches lock intent, releasing a piece makes a move, and pressing the clock completes it. FIDE regulations are deliberately designed to strip all ambiguity and subjectivity away from the arbiter's table, replacing intent with observable mechanical action. Ultimately, competitors who choose to ignore these strict physical mechanics operate entirely outside the reality of the tournament system. To survive in professional competition, a player must treat the physical and temporal rulebook with the exact same rigor, calculation, and respect as their opening theory.